I wish you all a good day. Today, I want to tell you a story that took place in Fort Salinas, New Mexico in the year 2013. It is a story I witnessed with my own eyes in the middle of an installation that had forgotten what the concept of standard really meant. And today, I want to share it with you. Now, let us begin. The gate at Fort Salinas had been broken for so long that nobody even flinched when it refused to lift. At 6:30, the desert light came flat and pale over the checkpoint, washing the sand-colored booths and chain-link fences into one dull blur. The sentries had been improvising for weeks using hand gestures, old radios, and a strip of yellow caution tape in place of a working barrier arm. The tape fluttered limply in the breeze as a long line of cars backed up down the access road. In the second booth stood Private First Class Jalen Ruiz, barely 20, his hands already trembling slightly on his clipboard. Beside him, his partner Specialist Kim was muttering under his breath, complaining about how it jammed today of all days. He kicked the concrete base of the control post, as if that pain might somehow make the metal cooperate. Then a black SUV rolled slowly to the front. No plates, no decals, just tinted windows and a small flag clipped to the antenna. Ruiz stepped forward, motioning for identification. The driver lowered the window and the air seemed to still. Inside sat Colonel Sarah Weller, the new commanding officer of Fort Salinas. She had arrived a day earlier than the staff expected her. No escort, no ceremony. Just a quiet entrance, clearly meant to see the place unvarnished. And that she certainly did. Ruiz froze. Kim stammered, offering a flustered good morning to the ma'am and asking for just 1 second. He turned toward the console, jabbing the button for the gate. Nothing. The red light blinked stubbornly. He tried again. Still nothing. Ruiz tried to lift the caution tape himself, fumbling as it caught the side mirror and tore. The SUV sat there, engine idling, while a dozen other cars piled up behind it. Colonel Weller leaned out slightly. Her voice was even, almost soft. She asked the gentleman if this was the usual procedure. Kim opened his mouth, then clearly thought better of it. Ruiz looked ready to sink right into the gravel. Weller's eyes moved past them to the sagging fence line, the faded sign that still read, "Welcome to Fort Salinas Pride, Precision, Purpose," with the last word half peeled away. She gave a small nod, as if something important had just been confirmed. Then, without another word, she parked the SUV, stepped out, and walked the rest of the way through the open gate. By noon, word of the gate incident had spread to every building on post. The maintenance sergeant who had promised to fix the sensor the following week suddenly found himself reprioritizing. The admin office buzzed with theories. Some said the colonel was furious. Others speculated she had laughed. Both were wrong. Sarah spent the next 12 hours walking. Boots scraping against sun-baked concrete, she made her way through motor pool lots cluttered with idle vehicles. A clinic short-staffed and dimly lit. Barracks where air conditioning units rattled like old bones. No shouting, no speeches. Just inquiries. She asked a mechanic hunched under an engine block what was working there. He shrugged, replying only, "When parts come in." She asked when they come in. He replied that sometimes they just do not. At the mess hall, she ate beside the junior personnel, no aide in sight. The mashed potatoes were cold, she noticed, but she did not send them back. At housing, a spouse showed her a leaking ceiling patch. The woman said, half embarrassed to complain, that they keep saying next quarter. Sarah wrote the address on a notepad. No rank or title attached. Just a name, Weller. By dusk, she had seen enough to know it was not neglect, it was drift. Standards had loosened one small compromise at a time. An installation that once trained thousands now limped through routines, proud in memory more than in practice. That night, standing by her office window, she watched the flag at the parade ground droop halfway up the pole. The halyard had frayed and stuck mid-raise. It was emblematic, really, a symbol stranded between intention and effort. She let the thought settle, heavy but not hopeless. The next morning, the staff assembled in the auditorium, officers, NCOs, civilian leads. She walked in precisely at 0800. No slides, no music, just her and a yellow legal pad. She began by stating she was not here to fix blame. She was here to fix systems. A few heads lifted, a few dropped. She says she knew about the gate, letting the chuckles ripple through. She called it her welcome gift, and it was the perfect start. She drew a small box on her notepad, visible even from the front row. This, she said, is a standard, a gate that opens, a form that routes correctly, a vehicle ready when it is needed. These are not luxuries, they are the foundation. We have been living without them, telling ourselves we will get back to them after things calm down. But there is no after, there is only now. Her voice stayed calm, almost conversational, but her eyes did not drift once. She would not ask for miracles. She would ask for honesty. For 6 months, she wanted the truth where the leaks are, where the decay starts. We will build from there. Someone in the back asked the ma'am about accountability, noting that people had been skating for years. Sarah looked at him evenly. Accountability is not about catching the last mistake. It is about designing a system where the next one cannot hide. Silence hung, long enough to make people shift in their seats. Then she said simply that we start at the gate. By the end of that week, the gatehouse became a laboratory. Ruiz and Kim, formerly the Punchline, were reassigned to lead a small team testing entry procedures. It was grueling work involving checklists, camera calibrations, weatherproofing, and training logs. Weller stopped by daily, sometimes just to observe, sometimes to hand them coffee and ask what had broken that day. When Ruiz told her the sensor vendor had not answered calls in 2 weeks, she did not scold him. She had him map the whole communication chain, who ordered what, when, how, and posted on the bulletin board. By the next morning, every team that passed through the gate saw their own reflection in that chart, delays born not of laziness but of fog. She asked if they saw this, tapping a box labeled awaiting email confirmation. This is where initiative dies. We will cut that step, or we will make it visible. Either way, it will not hide again. Word spread faster than any memo. The colonel was not just fixing the gate, she was making it a mirror. Each evening, the compound lights came on a little earlier, the sun dipping behind the low western hills. Sarah kept her office door open, the sound of distant drills drifting in. The bulletin board behind her grew crowded with maps, charts, sticky notes, each one a thread in the tangle of a 5,000-person organism relearning to breathe. Sometimes she caught herself watching the window reflection, the same gate she had walked through that first morning, now under repair. The personnel waved cars through with crisp signals. The new barrier arm stood waiting for its motor. It was not dramatic, it was patient, and in that patience, something was shifting, barely visible but real. On Sunday evening, she took a slow walk out to the flagpole. The air smelled faintly of rain, rare for Salinas. The sky bled orange and pink over the sand. She looked up at the flag, still torn halfway up, and reached for the halyard. As she pulled, the rope scraped, then caught. She tugged once more, firmer. The flag inched higher. Not all the way, but enough to stir in the wind. A voice called from behind her. Ruiz again, off duty, but still in uniform. He offered, "Ma'am, that he could get maintenance for that tomorrow." She smiled, hand still on the rope. She said there was no hurry. Let it remind us where we started. The wind picked up, the fabric snapping against the twilight. Somewhere in the distance, a hammer struck metal, a steady rhythm, the sound of something being rebuilt. And for the first time since she arrived, the facility did not feel tired. It felt awake. 2 weeks after the gate fiasco, Fort Salinas looked busy. Not better yet, just busier. Clipboards, emails, whiteboards sprouting everywhere like a fever. Colonel Sarah Weller called it the mapping phase. Everyone else called it the audit, said with a mix of dread and awe. Her rule was simple: nothing gets fixed until it is understood. Each department, maintenance, logistics, training, family services, was assigned a cross-functional working group. A sergeant, a civilian, an officer, and someone from outside the unit entirely. She told them this was so no one could hide behind jargon, and so we stopped mistaking noise for progress. The first real flashpoint came in the maintenance hangar. Sergeant Major Vic Hall, the grizzled head of the motor pool, had been running things the same way since his early service days. He did not take kindly to outsiders with clipboards, telling him his system was opaque. When Captain Imani Shaw, engineering officer, young, sharp, unflinching, showed up with her small team to document supply flow, Hall crossed his arms. He stated they had 3 trucks waiting on parts. That was the problem, not his filing system. Imani met his glare with one of her own. And how did he know those parts were even ordered? Hall frowned. He just knew. Sarah arrived mid-standoff, calm as ever. She did not raise her voice. She just picked up a random work order off the desk. She asked the sergeant major who signed this. Hall looked. Corporal Dunn, my lead tech. Who approved it? Hall hesitated. I did. She turned the paper over. Blank. Where is your signature? He shifted. It must have been filed before I got to it. No, she said evenly. This one is from yesterday. Hall's jaw tightened. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then she set the paper down and said quietly that we do not have bad people here. We have broken habits. Let us fix those. And she left them to it. That moment became legend, how the colonel did not humiliate Hall, did not write him up, just forced him to look at his own blind spot. A week later, he was the one leading the new maintenance tracking overhaul, voluntarily. The working groups met twice a week in the post's old auditorium. Folding tables, coffee urns, butcher paper taped to walls. Weller made a point walking in 10 minutes late so she could see if they had started without her. By the second meeting, they always had. Someone reported that maintenance readiness was down 20% from last quarter. Training compliance was 48%. Family housing had backlogged work orders, 217. Sarah did not scold. She nodded. Now we know where we stand. Knowing is progress. It was not glamorous, but something subtle was happening. People were talking across silos for the first time. The installation was rediscovering its own nervous system. Then came pushback. It always does. Old-timers grumbled about another new broom. Middle managers complained that the colonel was micromanaging. One even muttered in the PX Ryan that she was trying to run this place like a startup. She overheard. She smiled. Maybe I am. Startups build from scratch. But tension bled into her own staff meetings. Her XO, Major Daniels, finally said what others would not. Ma'am, people are tired. They feel watched. Sarah considered that. Good. They should. Accountability feels like pressure when you are used to drift. He frowned. You will burn them out. Then I will rotate them, she said, but I will not lower the bar. The gate duo Ruiz and Kim had become something of a phenomenon. Their small experiment turned into a full-fledged security excellence model. They documented every checkpoint failure, redesigned the rotation schedule, and built a real-time dashboard that tracked entry times. Their data caught the attention of HQ's regional security director. Within a month, their process was being studied by 2 other installations. When Weller called them into her office to brief the command team, Ruiz stumbled through the opening slides, voice shaky. Ma'am, we started with the average vehicle throughput. Jalen, she interrupted gently, do not sell the metrics. Tell the story. He blinked, then nodded. Right. The story is it used to take 3 minutes to get a car through. Now it is 1 minute, and nobody gets yelled at in the process. That got a small laugh around the table. Even Daniels cracked a smile. Afterward, when the team had left, Weller lingered at the whiteboard, where Ruiz had doodled a crude little gate arm, labeled Version 3 Actually Works. She stood there a moment, smiling faintly. That doodle would stay up for months. By late April, small wins were stacking up. Readiness scores ticked upward. Families reported faster repairs. The mess hall replaced cracked trays and started tracking meal satisfaction, something no one had bothered with before. And yet, as higher they climbed, the more resistance surfaced. An anonymous note slid under her office door one morning. It read, "Colonel, we get it. Standards matter, but you cannot measure pride." She pinned it to her corkboard, right next to the latest readiness report. "We will see," she murmured. In May, a storm rolled across the desert, lightning, sand, wind tearing through the motor pool. One of the maintenance sheds lost power mid-shift, shortening the inventory system. The team improvised manually, but the data loss set them back days. Hall braced for Weller's wrath. Instead, she arrived with a flashlight and a clipboard. "Okay," she said simply, "what survived?" "Not much," he admitted. "Hard copy logs, maybe." She crouched down beside him in the dim light. "Good. Then we will start there. You and me, right now." They worked side by side for hours, handwriting what they could salvage. It was the kind of moment no camera would capture grit without spectacle. And yet, when word spread, morale jumped again. The colonel was not above the tough manual work. Still, the pace took its toll. Her staff began skipping lunches, juggling overlapping meetings. Some officers started reverting to old shortcuts just to keep things moving. Sarah noticed. She did not explode. She started walking the compound again, quietly, same as that first week. People stiffened when they saw her. She would just nod, ask a question or two, and move on. By June, the color of the place was changing literally. The desert light seemed warmer, less bleached. Maybe it was just new paint on old walls. Or maybe it was morale seeping back into the bones of the facility. One evening, standing outside her office, Sarah watched the new flag rise smoothly on its repaired halyard. It caught the last light of day full height, crisp against the fading sky. Major Daniels came up beside her. He remarked that it looks good, ma'am. It does, she said. Did you notice who raised it? He squinted. Ruiz? Not just him, his whole shift. No supervision. They just did it. Daniels smiled faintly. He guessed her gate experiment worked. She glanced at him. It is never about the gate. But beneath the calm surface, she knew the next phase would be harder. Sustaining momentum always is. The installation had learned how to start again, but would it hold when she was not watching? Her gaze drifted to the far side of the compound, where floodlights buzzed over the motor pool. A new sign hung on the chain-link fence, "Foundation First." Someone had made it out of old stencil letters and spray paint. Not an order, a reminder. The colonel exhaled slowly, the desert air cooling around her. "All right," she whispered. "Let us see if it lasts." And somewhere behind her, in a conference room full of overworked officers and half-finished coffee, another meeting began without her. Summer hit Fort Salinas like a dare. By July, the heat shimmered off the tarmac, curling the horizon and warping the edges of metal. The post hummed with the heavy sound of progress generators, drills, shouted orders, but beneath it all ran a new hum: fatigue. The honeymoon was over. At first, everyone had chased the colonel's energy like a current. Fixed the gate, cleaned the records, tightened the standards. It had felt good, visible, measurable. But now the metrics were leveling off. Readiness had plateaued. Complaints were rising again. The new order was not new anymore. It was work. And then, one Friday morning, the system broke in a way that could not be ignored. The power grid failed. Not across the city, just inside the post perimeter. A fried circuit at the operations hub took down half the network. Communications, security cameras, digital logs, the new dashboard system, all blind. Sarah was in a meeting when it happened. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Emergency generators kicked in with a low, uneven rumble. "Report," she asked calmly. Her XO, Daniels, was already on the phone. Ops Center says transformer surge. Backup relays not engaging. "Not engaging?" she repeated. "Why not?" He hesitated. Maintenance backlog. The inspection was delayed last month. For a moment, her expression did not change. Then she stood up, the room already moving with her. "All right, let us go find out what else we have been delaying." The scene at the operations hub was chaos. Personnel in reflective vests running in and out, the air thick with diesel fumes from portable generators. Hall was there, drenched in sweat, barking orders that no one seemed to hear. When he spotted Sarah, he grimaced. "Ma'am, we have got one relay melted clean through, waiting on replacement." She crouched beside the dead circuit box. The plastic casing was blackened, wires curled like burnt paper. She touched it lightly with her glove. How long was this flagged overdue? Hall did not answer. "Sergeant Major," she said quietly, "how long?" He swallowed. 6 weeks. That silence afterward, heavy, alive, was not anger. It was realization. For all their systems, all their charts and dashboards, the compound had slipped right back into the habit she had been fighting since day one, believing the process was the fix. forgetting that vigilance was the point. She stood, "Get it stable, then bring every section lead to the auditorium at 1900. I want the truth, no filters." That evening, the auditorium was packed. No PowerPoint this time, just the colonel at the front, hands clasped, uniform still streaked with dust from the hub. She looked out at the crowd, officers, civilians, contractors. The fatigue was mutual now. Everyone knew this was bigger than one outage. "I told you in January," she began quietly, "that we were not here to find blame. That is still true. But tonight, I need honesty. Somewhere between March and now, we started believing our own progress reports." A few glances shifted down. "We got addicted to dashboards and forgot to look at the wires. We started mistaking visibility for vigilance." She let that hang. "That is on me." A murmur rippled through the room. The admission disarmed them. "I cannot lead a standard that lives on paper," she continued. "It has to live in each of you, even when I am not watching. So here is what happens next. We reset. Every team reviews their weakest point, not their numbers, their blind spot. And this time, you own it." Someone called out, "Ma'am, how do we do that without burning out again?" She nodded. "By trusting the system we have built, but only as far as we have tested it. No more blind faith in data. No more ceremonial compliance." Hall stood in the back, arms crossed, face unreadable. Then, slowly, he raised a hand. "Ma'am, about that relay, that was on me. I did not want to pull a crew off vehicles during inspection week. I figured we would get to it." She met his eyes. "You just did. That is leadership." For the next 72 hours, Fort Salinas ran on grit. Generators sputtered, comms flickered, tempers ran short. But something deeper began to shift. Teams stopped waiting for permission. They improvised, adapted, collaborated. In the motor pool, Hall personally rewired the backup circuit with 2 of his youngest techs, teaching them every connection point. At the clinic, the admin staff ran patient intakes on paper efficiently. Even at the gate, Ruiz and Kim adjusted to manual logbooks without complaint. Kim said with a wry grin that it feels like day one again. Ruiz nodded. "Except now, we know why it matters." By Monday, power was restored. The outage left scars, fried boards, long nights, but also a strange pride. The installation had proven it could function, not flawlessly, but faithfully, when everything designed to make life easier failed. That night, Sarah stood on the catwalk above the motor pool, watching the lights flicker back on one building at a time. Daniels joined her, exhaustion in every line of his face. He said he had never seen her admit fault before. It caught the room off guard. She smiled faintly. "Good. They needed to see I bleed too." He nodded. "They believe again. But how do you keep it when you are gone, I mean?" She looked down at the workers below, still moving even after dark. "You do not keep it," she said. "You teach them to notice when it slips. You make vigilance contagious." The hum of machinery rose again, steady, alive. The desert wind carried the faint smell of ozone, burnt wire, renewal. The next morning, a memo went out across every department. Not a reprimand, not an order. Just one sentence, typed and signed by the colonel herself. "Standards are not things we meet once. They are things we return to daily." It was pinned beside every clock, every workstation, every gatepost. And under each one, in black marker, someone had written 3 words: "Foundation first, always. By August, the sun had scorched everything to its truest color: metal, earth, even people. The facility ran leaner now, but steadier. They did not chase perfection anymore. They sustained momentum. The colonel had shifted from commanding to curating, pulling back, letting others lead meetings, step in, own the rhythm. That is when the transformation really began, the invisible kind. Late one night, Ruiz caught the colonel walking alone near the gate again. "Ma'am," he said, hesitating, "we thought you would stop checking up on us." She smiled, eyes on the clean, gleaming gate arm. "I am not checking up. I am checking in." He looked puzzled. "What is the difference?" "One is about control," she said. "The other is about care." And with that, she walked on into the dark, her silhouette crossing the floodlit concrete, small, deliberate, unhurried. Behind her, Ruiz watched the flag ripple under the floodlights and whisper to himself, half proud, half in awe, "I guess the standard holds." September brought color back to the desert. The monsoon rain swept through Fort Salinas, washing the dust off roofs and vehicles, and for the first time in years, the installation did not smell like rust. The flag flew clean against a deep blue sky. 6 months since the gate fiasco. 6 months since the colonel walked through a broken system and decided not to fix people, but the air they worked in. Everything seemed steady until she tried to step back. It began with a decision she had planned for months, the delegation experiment. If the culture was real, it should hold without her hand on the wheel. She announced it during the Monday briefing. For the next 30 days, said, "I am delegating full operational oversight to the department heads. I will observe but not intervene. You will make the calls. If what we have built is strong, it should outlast me." A few nods, a few nervous looks. Major Daniel shifted in his chair. "Are you sure about this, ma'am?" "Positive," she said. "This is the test. Foundations are not proven when the architect is on site. They are proven when the storms come." For the first 2 weeks, the system held beautifully. Maintenance logged 0 overdue work orders. Training reports hit 97% completion. Families reported faster housing repairs than any time in 5 years. Even the mess hall earned an inspection commendation. Daniels, running point in her absence, half joked, "Ma'am, you have made yourself obsolete." She smiled. "Good. That is the job." But storms always come. Week 3. A convoy returning from a training range lost one of its vehicles in electrical fire mid-transit. No casualties, but the incident triggered a chain of procedural reviews. The after-action report showed a failure in the preventive maintenance schedule. A single skipped inspection signed off automatically in the system. The digital tracker, a product of their efficiency drive, had not flagged it. The irony cut deep. The system they had built to prevent drift had drifted. Sarah found the report waiting on her desk at dawn. She read it twice. Quiet. Still. Then she picked up her notebook, the same yellow pad from her first week, and walked out the door. By mid-morning, she stood in front of the senior staff again. Same auditorium, same hard chairs. Her tone was measured, but the air carried that same tension as the night of the power outage. "One vehicle burned," she said simply. "No one hurt. But this was preventable. The report says the inspection auto-verified due to a system sync issue. What that means in plain English is someone trusted the computer more than they trusted their eyes." Silence. She turned to the readiness chart projected on the wall, the steady upward slope of the last 6 months. Progress can blind you. We got good at measuring, but measuring is not mastery. And efficiency without attention is just speed. Daniels started to speak, but she held up a hand. I am not angry. I am reminded. She looked around the room, eyes landing on faces she had seen transform. Hall, Ruiz, Imani, Kim. We have rebuilt habits. Now we need to protect them. That is the difference between reform and culture. One changes the tools, the other changes the reflex. After the meeting, she went to the motor pool. The burned-out truck sat alone on the concrete pad, blackened and hollow. The smell of char clung to the air, sharp and metallic. Hall was already there, hands on his hips, face drawn. It could have been worse, he muttered. Sarah nodded. It could have been avoided. He did not argue. I should have caught it. Maybe, she said, but we built a system so no one person had to catch everything. So what failed? He hesitated. We trusted the screen. Sarah's gaze drifted to the melted dashboard of the truck, the warped glass. Then maybe it is time to relearn the weight of a checklist. She reached into her notepad, tore out a page, and wrote by hand, "Trust the eyes first." She pinned it to the charred hood. That night, rain came again, thick, heavy, cleansing. It flooded the lot, turned gravel into mud. But inside the command offices, lights burned late. Teams reviewed their procedures line by line, not because she told them to, but because they wanted to. Ruiz stopped by her office, dripping wet, uniform dark with rain. "Ma'am," he said, "we started manual spot checks again at the gate, just like old times." She smiled faintly. And? More accurate too. She leaned back in her chair. Sometimes progress means remembering the slow things. 2 days later, Daniels found her at the flagpole at dawn. She was alone, coat soaked through, eyes on the rising flag. He quietly asked if she ever thought that maybe she built it too well. They do not need you now. Sarah did not look away from the flag. Then I did it right. He studied her for a moment. You are leaving soon, are you not? She smiled. Just a fraction. Command cycles end. Foundations stay. That afternoon, the installation hosted an unplanned ceremony. Nothing formal, just a gathering on the parade ground. The whole garrison out in the warm wind. The colonel had not called it. The people had. Hall spoke first. 6 months ago, this place could not open a gate. Now, we do not wait to be told what is broken. We fix it. That is on her. The crowd turned to her, and for once, Sarah looked unguarded, not proud, just grateful. When it was her turn, she stepped up to the mic and said only this: "You have made Fort Salinas self-correcting. That is the highest form of readiness. You have built something I can walk away from." She paused, the breeze tugging at her sleeves. "And if the gate breaks again, good. It will remind you where we started." As the crowd dispersed, Ruiz and Kim stood by the gate, watching her walk back toward headquarters. The barrier arm gleamed white in the sun. Kim murmured, "Do you think she is really leaving?" Ruiz shrugged. "It does not matter. The system is ours now." He hit the button. The gate rose, smooth, soundless. For a second, both of them just watched it, smiling. That evening, the desert went gold. From above, the post looked almost alive. Roads connecting like veins, vehicles in motion, people moving with quiet purpose. The flag cast a long shadow across the courtyard, the same one that once sagged halfway up. Sarah stood at her window, watching the sunset blaze through the glass. Behind her, the wall of charts and maps had been cleared. Only one thing remained pinned. The photo of the gate, version 3, actually works. Daniels knocked softly on the doorframe. "HQ confirmed," he said. "Your next assignment is approved." She turned to him. "Then it is time." He nodded. "The foundation is ready." She smiled, eyes tracing the horizon one last time. "Let us see if it holds." Later, when the lights dimmed and the installation settled into its quiet hum, the camera would linger on that gate one last time, the arm rising, headlights streaming through, personnel waving cars in with calm precision. And in the corner of the frame, the flag fully raised, moving steady in the night wind. The music would swell not with triumph, but with something quieter. Continuity, stewardship, the rhythm of a place that had learned to take care of itself. The morning she left Fort Salinas, the sun rose without ceremony. No formation, no farewell speeches, no band. Just a row of quiet faces by the gate, the same gate that once jammed and humiliated her on day one. Her duffel was light. Most of what mattered stayed behind. Ruiz was on shift, leaning by the booth with Kim, both standing a little straighter than usual. "Permission to open, ma'am?" Ruiz asked, half smiling. She glanced at the gate arm. "Does it need permission anymore?" He pressed the button. It lifted smooth, motor humming like a low, steady heartbeat. Sarah stepped through, boots crunching against the gravel, and paused midway. The desert wind brushed her hair across her face. She turned, eyes on the compound that had once been brittle with apathy and now pulsed with quiet life. Daniels stood near the flagpole, hands behind his back. Hall waved from the motor pole. Even Imani, usually all sharp edges, smiled from the admin steps. The flag flapped clean and strong in the morning wind. Sarah gave a small nod, almost imperceptible, then climbed into the SUV. The vehicle rolled forward slowly, purposefully, and just as the rear tires crossed the threshold, Ruiz called out, voice carrying across the lot, "Ma'am, you forgot something." She leaned out the window. "What is that?" He pointed at the sign hung above the gate, fresh paint this time, clean edges, foundation first. She smiled. "No, that is yours now." Weeks later, the official commendation came from Headquarters Fort Salinas Most Improved Readiness Installation, Q4 2023. The letter listed metrics, improvements, retention rates. None of it captured what actually changed. Inside the facility, people barely mentioned the award. They were too busy doing what they had built, running systems that ran themselves. Hall's tech crew now rotated audits quarterly without being told. The clinic ran night hours for families of deployed personnel. Ruiz had been promoted to corporal and trained a new wave of gate sentries, his manual spot check method now part of the standard operating procedure. And each morning, before the flag was raised, someone walked the grounds noting what was off. A light bulb, a stain, a small leak. The habit had spread, invisible but disciplined. Nobody called it inspection anymore. They called it the return. Meanwhile, across the state, Sarah Weller took command of a logistics center twice the size. It had its own problems, morale cracks, system delays, the usual decay of drift. Her staff expected her to arrive swinging, issuing orders and overhauling org charts. She did not. She spent her first week walking, listening, noticing. On the 8th day, she called a meeting. No slides, no ceremony. "Before we fix anything," she said, "we are going to find our gate." Confused looks all around. "Every organization has one," she explained, "a point where dysfunction becomes visible, where we stop pretending. Once we find it, we build from there." Someone asked, "And what do we call the program?" She smiled, eyes steady. "Foundation first." Back at Fort Salinas, a storm swept through in late October, sand and wind so fierce it rattled every window on the compound. When it cleared, the flag was still there, a little frayed on the edge but unbowed. The gate's power flickered once, twice, then stabilized. The sentry on duty checked the circuit manually, logged the anomaly by hand, and replaced the tape before sunrise. No one told him to. The system had become instinct. The story that started as a gate fiasco turned, in the end, into something quieter and harder to see: a rhythm, a way of being. Standards that did not need speeches or threats, just presence. Because culture does not announce itself. It lingers in small acts done consistently. A checklist actually checked. A flag raised on time. A gate that opens when it should. A year later, a new commander drove through that same gate for the first time. Ruiz, now staff sergeant, saluted sharply. The new colonel returned it, eyes flicking to the sign overhead. "Foundation first," she read aloud. "Who came up with that?" Ruiz smiled. "Long story, ma'am, but it works." She nodded. "Let us hope it lasts." Ruiz looked past her to the flag, rising straight into the wind. It will. In the final shot, the camera would linger not on people, but on places. The gate arm, gleaming white against the morning sun. The motor pool, tools lined neatly. The clinic lights flicking on. And the flag catching full wind at the top of the pole. As the sound of the desert rises, the hum of an installation alive and steady, a single line fades onto the screen. Culture does not begin with slogans. It begins at the gate.